Sometimes it can seem that you pretty much have endless tasks and nowhere near enough time to do them, leading to stress and procrastination. But with a good scheduling technique, you'll be able to overcome these limitations and actually get exponentially more done. Hey guys, my name's Daniel Gibbon and I just graduated with an ATAR of 99.90 and a top percentile UCAT, gaining the acceptance into med school with a 12k per year scholarship. In my last video, I went over my personal Year 12 schedule and gave a couple tips on how to schedule yourself. And I would recommend looking at that if you're interested. In this video, I'm going to go a bit more in depth on the advice that I recommend for people to use for scheduling, talking about how you can collect, prioritize, and schedule tasks effectively. There will be timestamps below if you want to skip to a particular section. So the first thing that you need to be able to schedule well is to actually be able to collect all of the tasks that you need to complete. As sometimes you can get kind of lost track of all of the tasks you have because there's so many of them and they can be in so many different categories of your life. So it's really important to actually keep track of all the tasks you need. And this can involve collecting all the really important tasks like your deadlines for your assignments or your exam dates. And then also collecting all of the individual tasks on something like a to-do list, which I'll elaborate on later. So now that you've collected all these tasks, the next step is to be able to prioritize and organize those tasks so you know where to get started. As when you just have a huge list of tasks to do, it can be really hard to know where to start, and it can lead to you spending a lot of time on tasks that aren't actually that important and also lead to a lot more procrastination. To counteract this and spend your time as efficiently as possible, there are two main things that you can do. The first thing is to actually use a system of prioritization, as a lot of students end up just doing whatever task seems most urgent to them. However, they never actually think about how important it actually is to complete that task. So you can use like a sort of prioritization system to help you give a little bit of clarity on what tasks you should be doing. The system that I use is a certain matrix called this Eisenhower matrix, in which you organize the tasks based on their importancy and urgency, categorizing them into either important and urgent, important and non-urgent, and so on. Having this categorization can show you what tasks you actually need to get done instead of just keeping up with all of the really urgent but not that important tasks. So that you can focus on completing those important and urgent tasks first, and then instead of going straight to the non-important urgent tasks, you can then instead go to the important but non-urgent tasks, because they'll usually have a lot higher of a reward with your time because they're actually important tasks. So by having this sort of categorization, you can organize your tasks into these different categories, and that can give you a little bit more clarity on what tasks you should actually be doing and when you should be doing them, instead of you just doing the most urgent tasks. The second thing is to actually categorize things into groups or significant parts of your life. As a prioritization matrix is very important to know what's important, but to actually keep track of the different tasks you need to do in your life and have a little bit more context on what things you need to do in each aspect of your life, it can be very helpful to categorize those tasks. So for me, I separate my tasks into a couple main categories, which are university, YouTube, life in general, and then some career tasks as well. So by categorizing them into these main sections, I can keep track of all the different things I need to do in all the different parts of my life. And it can also help me remember other subtasks that I might need to do, and kind of preventing me from forgetting some important things that I might need to do in these different aspects of my life. I would recommend looking into Notion and also Amazing Marvin to do these sorts of things, as with these apps you can actually organize within them these sort of prioritization systems and organization systems. As here's an example of a system that you can use on Amazing Marvin, where you can create tasks on Amazing Marvin, and then you can also organize them into that matrix that we were talking about earlier, alongside those categories or those life categories that we talked about. And this is just my sort of basic kind of Amazing Marvin template that I used to use. And here's also a template of my Notion kind of document, which I use as a to-do list tracker. As here I have made a sort of page as a to-do list tracker where I can input tasks, and it then organizes them based on priority and also categories, so that I can actually use the tips that we were talking about earlier. So I can also go further in depth onto these Amazing Marvin and Notion pages in a future video if you're interested, and show you how to make it yourself as well. So now we've looked at collecting and prioritizing tasks. The next step is to actually schedule those tasks into a calendar. And a lot of people stop at the actual to-do list step in their sort of prioritization and time management, as they think that it's kind of best to just have a to-do list and just cross them off. And although this can work, and it can work very well for a lot of students, for me personally, and what I recommend for others personally, is that you actually plan out those tasks in a physical calendar where you time block out your time. And so by doing that, it helps you a lot with procrastination, and it also helps you to be more kind of aware of what you should be doing with your time, and helps you not to kind of overbook yourself as well. So I strongly recommend using an actual physical calendar where you can time block out different times for these different tasks that you need to do. As for what calendar to use, there is tons and tons of options. However, I would highly recommend that you use a digital calendar, of one which you can access on your phone, laptop, or whatever device you want, because you really want it to be very portable and very easily accessible, so you can tell exactly what you need to be doing at all times, and that you don't get kind of lost. Because if it's written down maybe in your diary, and if you get to bring your diary, then sometimes you just won't know what you're meant to be doing. So I highly recommend that you use a digital calendar, and Apple and Google Calendar is very good. And here's an example of my Google Calendar, which I use daily, and I use to plan out all of my time. And as you can see, I've actually time blocked out my time for all of these different events. However, when you're time blocking, you have to be very careful, and because you have to do it in a very effective manner for it to be as efficient as possible. As the first thing you need to look out for is that you have to make sure that you're being very specific when you're actually time blocking out your time. So let's say you wanted to revise some bio in the morning from, let's say, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Instead of just saying bio study, actually say exactly what you're going to study. Maybe say study bio, the concept of the different types of evolution, and complete worksheet 2.1 or something. And be very specific with what exactly you're going to do in that session, as otherwise it can lead to an increased amount of procrastination of you just sitting down at a desk and trying to think, what should I do now? I want to do bio study, but what do I do to study bio? There's so many different things I could be doing, and you don't actually know, and that can lead to you losing time when you're actually trying to decide what to study, and can also result in you doing something that is less efficient with your time. So doing some sort of bio study which isn't as efficient as doing a different type of bio study. So when you're actually time blocking out your time, be very specific with what exactly you want to be doing in all of these sections. The next really important thing is not to overschedule yourself, as we all have that natural tendency to be like, oh, I want to do this, and this in a day. But it's pretty much never possible, and you have to be really careful that you're not overly scheduling yourself. Because what will happen is you'll just end up only being able to do a couple of those tasks, and even though maybe you're even really productive in that day, because you only did maybe like 5 of the 20 tasks you wanted to get done, you feel very unproductive, and it can be kind of detrimental to your mental health. So I would highly recommend that when you're blocking in those times, that you give ample time for you to actually do those tasks. So think exactly how much do you think it's going to take, and then give a little bit of a buffer region, give a little bit of extra time afterwards, just in case it takes a little bit longer than you expect. And this can be a sort of continual refining process, as you'll kind of learn how long different tasks take, and it will be easier to actually schedule them well. However, you do have to be careful of not going to the other extreme of scheduling in way too much time for a task, as there's this thing called Parkinson's law, which is pretty much saying that the amount of time that you schedule to do a task, you'll always fill that time in a way. So be careful not to overschedule, but don't go too far in the underscheduling end either. But this is kind of a skill that you'll develop over time and get a little bit more comfortable with, but it's something that you should definitely be aware of when you're scheduling your time. So now we've looked at how to collect, prioritize, and schedule your tasks. Now we need to talk about when exactly you should be doing this collection, prioritization, and scheduling. So firstly, when it comes to collecting tasks, you should be collecting tasks continuously. That's why I really recommend a digital kind of to-do list tracker, so that whenever you think of a task or you're presented with a task you need to do, you get it straight into that collection phase of that to-do list and get it straight in there so you don't forget. And then the next thing is when you're prioritizing, that sort of prioritization should kind of be part of that collection phase. However, it can also be part of the next phase, which I'll talk about, which is the actual bit where you're scheduling it into your calendar. And the way I like to go about this is I'll schedule every Sunday afternoon for the following week, giving a very rough kind of schedule of what I want to be doing. And sometimes I'd even do a monthly schedule if I had a very kind of planned out month. So maybe I just had a month of revision that I had ahead. So I would plan the entire month out, but very vaguely. and then every week I would then plan it out again and make any refinements and then add a little bit more detail. And then I would also plan out the very day before, where I would add all the detail necessary and rearrange anything at all and just be very specific. So the day before you're getting your exact timetable for the next day, but every Sunday or something or every week you're making kind of a rough timetable to work off. So this will help you kind of schedule your time very efficiently, and it won't take too much time to schedule. But yeah, it's really important that you're always collecting those tasks, and it's good to have a sort of to-do list which prioritizes them while you're collecting them, so it saves a little bit of time in the prioritization step. And then finally, you're actually scheduling them in at different times. You're doing like a monthly, a weekly, and a daily sort of scheduling activity. Another important thing to take note of is to always be analyzing how effectively you're scheduling or how effectively you're spending your time. As it's always really important to be kind of self-analyzing yourself and trying to find better ways to further improve. So for me, I kind of like to maybe schedule in maybe like once a month or once a week where I'll look back and be like, is that the best way I could have spent my time? Or is there a way that I can spend my time better in the future? Or is there a scheduling technique I can maybe tweak a bit or improve to make the process a bit easier or a bit more effective? So it's really important to kind of always be analyzing yourself and trying to improve upon all the systems you're using. Like I said, I also made that video about my personal Year 12 schedule and a couple other vague scheduling tips before, which I'll link right here. And I made a couple other videos regarding UCAT and ATAR, so if you're interested in those, go have a look. If you found this video useful, I'll be really thankful if you could just leave a like, and if you like a lot of content about like ATAR, UCAT, life in general, then I would recommend that you subscribe, because I'll be releasing a lot more content about those sort of ideas in the future. But I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any questions or maybe you have any video suggestions or requests, please leave them in the comments below.